Welcome back, boys and girls, to Deep Dots. What should we do today? I have no clue. It's amazing that in just 300 episodes, if you count the special reports and all that good stuff, one can get to the end of like your topic rope. And you're like, shit, man, I've talked about aliens as much as I can even conceive of talking about aliens. Babaloo. It's kind of a breezy day today. Your weather update goes as follows. 68, sparsely cloudy. No chemtrails today. No chemtrails yesterday. Day before that, it was like we were inside the womb of, you know, some barium stomach, some aluminum oxide stomach. I've often toyed with just doing episodes where we just sit and shoot the breeze, as they might say. But we always find a topic, don't we? As you know, I love talking about stuff that we all feel, but we never talk about. You know, it's that subject matter where you find yourself at the end of a one-way street, and you're like, how the hell did I get here? And I passed a bunch of people as I was going down this street, and nobody said, hey, mister, where you going? That's a dead end right there. I suppose they assumed that I could sprout wings and fly out, right? I don't know. They thought I was going to that massage parlor at the end. I don't know. Yeah, we got politics we could talk about. You got the QAnon phenomenon. It's pretty interesting. But politics is so polarized, isn't it? You know, I'm either this and you're either that. And then we can just, I don't know, go after each other. I will say that I'm very impressed with you folks, because I will express an opinion here and there, and then I will find you guys down the line having enjoyed the show and giving it accolades of your own, and then I'll find out we completely believe the complete opposite stuff. And that's cool. It's like, all right, so they didn't, have a fit because we're different. I know a lot of you are very devout Christians, and you do believe that, well, let's just put it this way, you do believe what Christianity teaches, to whatever degree. And you know that I have my beliefs on that, areas where I believe it's of great value, and others that I think are more allegorical and, maybe valuable, maybe not. I don't know. But you stick around, and that's super cool. And again, it says more about you than it probably does for me, because I get to sit here and say whatever I want, and you are actually listening. You're sacrificing your time. And so you need to understand that it's extremely respected, and I'm your fan as much as you might be mine, With the self-help stuff, or the what I like to call self-improvement episodes, again, it's interesting. When I grew up in the Midwest, there wasn't a tremendous amount of talk about going to Hollywood and becoming something. It just never happened. I always say that because that's a cliche for anything in the entertainment business, right? It really means music, television, behind the camera, in front of the camera, whatever, right? So it was a certain number of years I had to think like the Midwest, which was that you'll never have a chance to be these things. And then there was just some point where, I don't know, I just had this, I'm going to do this, and you can't stop me, Fuck you, I won't do what you tell me. And I think when I was a kid, I really sensed the fear in adults. I sensed their mortality or maybe their fragility. I don't know. The fact that they weren't perfect, the fact they really didn't know what the hell they were doing. When I heard absolutely ignorant statements out of my parents from time to time, I was like, did you just say that? That doesn't make any goddamn sense. You're going to tell me the rest of the story? I don't think so. And it was very valuable. People used to come up to me, when I was younger, especially when I was younger. My parents divorced when I was 9. And, just for the record, they remained friends, okay? They're very good friends. In fact, very, very good friends after they divorced. So it wasn't like one of these, angry, custody wars and that kind of stuff. They just really handle it like amazing adults. And it's really funny because I've rarely seen a divorce go as beautifully clean as my parents. It's interesting. But people used to come up to me and, oh my God, that must have been hard. I'm like, I barely noticed. They weren't really spending a hell of a lot of time with me anyway as a kid, which in the end, I'm telling you, that might sound like a defense mechanism. Well, I don't care. Yeah, I would like my dad to have been there in Boy Scouts, which is actually, I was in Cub Scouts. I was too young to get in Boy Scouts. I tell that story in one of my episodes about watching the other kids' fathers help them create the wooden car that rolls down the ramp, and my dad wasn't there, and so I had to do it by myself, and I got the tire fucked up, and so it's rolling down this ramp, and it gets stuck, and I'm just like, this is, I said, this is some shit right here, it's just like, and I remember looking, the car gets stuck, and my other friends' cars are just fucking amazing. Their dads have done these incredible jobs, obviously, the fathers have done all the work, and I remember I did it the way it said it on the box, which is probably some diagram of how to do it in 1955. And my car goes down. And it's on the steepest decline of this ramp, and it's still stuck. I mean, that's how much the front right tire got off. I'm going to put the nail through it. And I looked at my mom. I remember just looking at my car and looking at my mom and going, what the fuck am I doing here? Right? This is about a father-son club, and I'm sitting here with you. You're not my dad, you're my mom, right? If we want to go fucking make pottery, let's have a mother-son situation, right? Consequently, I used to follow my mom to those pottery places back in the 70s when you would go and find one that's already been fired, and you had to etch down the little trim and the 50% mark, and you'd sand it off, and then you'd paint it. And I remember asking if I could do it, and they said, I must have been about 6 or 7. And I remember my mom going, well, maybe when you're older. And I'm like, I'm painting photographs in oil paint at home, and you're worried if I can paint a goddamn pottery thing? I mean, it's weird how this happens. But anyway, the divorce was cool because it taught me that you're only older when you get older. That's all that's taking place. It's up to you as to whether or not you're ever going to get wise, right? Maybe we make that the episode. Wisdom. It's actually funny. I remember thinking about creating that episode. There's an interesting thing about wisdom because I think it's a multidimensional definition, right? You can have a lot of wisdom in some weird people, but more often than not, you get wisdom from very relaxed, cool, centered people. Because to get it from any other source would be probably compromised wisdom. And I'll give an example. We know that the world is, it's been run by some secret societies and that kind of stuff. I don't want to get off into that realm in this episode, but imagine walking into a room and you have the richest / wisest men of this particular area of the world. But they're all into the biases, right? They're all into the we don't serve their kind sort of thing, and there's tradition, and you got to lick my heel for the first 20 years you're here, and then maybe if you're lucky, You keep getting, you know, apron bands and karate belts to the point you get up to my level and da-da-da, which is obviously a big fucking child stuck inside some goddamn Masonic ritual. And the only way they ever get any fucking power in this world is to engage in this bullshit, right? It's fake authority, it's fake wisdom, it's fake ascension and enlightenment. Obviously, we can't have a 12-year-old walk in and run the United States of America. I'm not talking about that. But an eager soul that wants to learn, that has a quaff of maturity about them, at least you can see they're on the right track. They're taking steps towards becoming a mature adult. That's the first inkling that you have someone who is basically a qualified apprentice. Because it takes a long time to teach someone something, no matter what it is, right? And it's best if you have come almost full circle with your emotional spectrum. And what does that mean? Well, I put it this way. When you write screenplays, there are these, it's like a color table. And what's a color table do when you're an artist? It lets you know what colors go together really well, meaning which colors are, when placed beside each other, will be very complementary to the eye. I'll give an example. Like a navy blue next to a nice milky gold. On the color wheel, you got your blues over here, and if you go straight across on a perpendicular line from the sphere, or the circle, you're going to find gold over there. And no matter how you draw a line through this chart, the geniuses of the world who figured all this out have got you covered. You can start at red, and you're like, I got a logo, it's got to be red. Well, what's a complementary color to red? And you just look at the color table and draw straight across, and boom, you find out what's there. With my writing teacher, Robert McKee, he has an emotional version of that. Love, hate, right? But then there's all the subtleties, and what he ends up doing is creating another circle on the outside, which is more of in your color wheel. You have prime colors, which are the ones that are the first crayon box you get, which just has like 12 colors in it, right? It's when they're really big and they have a flat side, so they don't roll off the desk. And then when you go out, you start getting the 100 crayon set, which is got all those wild-ass colors in it. And McKee does the same thing, right? So when I say that you have completed sort of a rotation of your emotional spectrum, you have gone the inner wheel and the outer wheel so many times that you're now sort of a master of it. You know, a grandmaster would be able to control their emotions at all times and genuinely control it down to the bowels of their soul. They control the motivation for any emotion. So it's not repressing anger. They simply manage the fact that they don't have any. If they cry, it's because they totally deeply want to cry from the bottom of their planet, right? Now, with us, at master level maybe, you get thrown some curveballs from time to time. You're like, Jesus. I just had a guy this afternoon. I'm in this alleyway, leaving for lunch, and it's just the best way to get out of this place. And I'm turning right, and the green light about 300 yards away has gone, and so there's a whole slew of cars coming in front of me. It's only one lane, and this guy wants to get into the alleyway. I got one car behind him. Here comes this blue truck. So I just signaled. I said, just 1 second. I'm pointing at that truck. I said, as soon as he's passed, I'll be out of here. And the guy honks, and the guy flips me off. And so I'm looking at him like, why are you flipping me off? It's like, maybe he thought I flipped him off, right? It's just, the gesture would have been like, 1 second, just didn't make any sense. For whatever reason, he thought I should be able to merge with this gigantic trough of traffic. It's interesting. He's probably not looking in his rearview mirror. But when that happened, I am sort of having this funny moment because I'm thinking, he doesn't get it, or for whatever reason, it's just kind of funny because there's no need to be upset. I'm out of there, blah, 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 right? When you get true wisdom from a good source, it's usually someone who's more relaxed when they're giving it to you. Now, obviously, there is wisdom in all things, right? So you could have a guy who's a chain smoker, you know, he's really hyper or whatever, and you're a machinist. And the dude just knows everything there is about machining metal or what have you. And so you go, and he's late or whatever, but man, in 10 minutes he could teach you 10 years worth of tricks. So there's that person too. I recently attended a meeting last night that was sort of euphoric. And this is good. This is actually really on track with wisdom. See how that shit happens? I am delving back into electronics like I have never done in my life. I am going for the complete picture of all things electronic, and I'm moving at an extremely rapid pace. And it is just, in doing this show and getting into ethereal models of electronics, when I now stare at things that I've been using my entire life, from resistors to capacitors to diodes to coils, IC boards, it is making more sense now than it ever has, and it's almost like on a universe level, which is great. But I still need assistance in learning all the pieces and parts that have been developed since I was last in it. Right. Last time I was in is about 2014, when I programmed this LED hat, this microcontroller, which was a blast. But I have much more aggressive. Gosh, I hate that. A bunch of qualifiers in a row. A very aggressive project for myself that will, again, give me a full spectrum knowledge of this thing. So anyway, I thought to myself, isn't there a group here locally that gets together that I could join, where I could sit with these brilliant people and just close the gap on having to look up a bunch of crap in Google? And so about 3 weeks ago, I went to meetup.com and I found this group. Not only is it a group that meets locally, but been meeting for 4 years straight, but there's this makers movement all around the world, and they are all about getting your hands dirty and making something happen. I guess there's a magazine called Make. Yes, I'm very late to this if you've been in this for a long time. But for those of you guys and girls that want to build something, again, Adafruit is run by a genius woman, so there's no sexual barrier or gender barrier to getting into electronics and building something, right? But I've designed this thing, I'll keep it a secret for now, and there was just a couple touch points of mechanical implementation that I needed to figure out. And so I went to the meeting, and I find out that this is a makers sort of organization, meaning they set up offices all around the world, and you have to independently do it, you know. It's not connected. This is one of the most advanced ones in the United States of America, and it's just 2 or 3 miles down from my house, maybe 5 tops. They have fabrication for wood and metal and just all kinds of crap in this place. It's beautiful. Beautiful conference room we were in. Probably about 20 people in there. A couple presentations, a couple guys presenting their projects and talking about how they have solved problems, which was great. And then it's just sort of freestyle after about an hour. And the gentleman behind me, he just looked totally interesting, man. He was just like, you could just tell everybody was talking to him because he knew things. And he had a book right there in front of him, which I own on an electronic form. And I said, you know, is that a good book? He said, yeah. And so he goes, I said, well, you know, what's in that book? What appeals to you? And he starts showing me a couple chapters out of it. But then we sit down and we get into it. And he's way ahead of me, right? I mean, this guy's, I don't know what he is, but genius would probably be a word you might use to describe him. And he's kind of frustrated because I said, well, this is the project I've assigned to myself, and I'm here to really learn a couple things. And so he shows me one of the chapters in the book, and he goes, do you know what that is? And I said, I don't know what that is. And then he goes into the description of it, and he starts hitting me with some industry phrases that I'm not familiar with, and he's kind of looking at me like, well, you've assigned this project to yourself, you better get, up to snuff on this stuff quickly. And so he's for a split second he's kind of frustrated. I can tell. He's like, what are you getting in these conversations for if you don't know the basic vocabulary? But then he changes gears and he starts describing it to me, and I get it, and I reiterate so he understands that I get it. And now he's like, okay, so I'm not wasting my time here talking to you about this kind of stuff. I presented a hardware problem to him, and we had my computer out. And he's like, well, look up this. And we looked this thing up, and it wasn't quite exactly what I was looking for. And he goes, oh, no, look up this. And I looked this new thing up, and it was exactly what I needed. And I mean, better than I ever imagined. Even he was surprised how advanced these parts have become. But the whole room is full of brilliant electronics experts. And novices. Totally novices. And I'm sitting there going, this is exactly where I need to be to get my goals. And so instead of me sitting in my home, we're doing the Willy Wonka routine, hoping that I can type the right keywords together in Google to get what I want, I sought out wisdom and instantaneously found it. I found the facility that if I ever needed anything fabricated, if I needed a metal plate to be fabricated, they could do it to spec. Probably cost a ton of money for the prototype, but who cares, right? The President of the United States in 2018 has said something very interesting that I mentioned in another episode, which I want to say right now, because we haven't heard this statement in a really long time, and even if we have heard it and I just missed it, we haven't had any president take action to make sure that this statement becomes a truth or realization for the citizens of this country in probably over 30 years, which is the following. There are few things in life more satisfying than a job well done. That you engaged in something and it was something that you accomplished, you designed, whatever, and you finished it. By the way, I have a little spider on the, he's up there in the tripod of the camera. He's like one of those really furry house spiders. And hopefully he's not climbing on the lens. But if you see a big spider go by, I'm aware of that he's up there. I think it's a female. It's got the emerald stone on the back. It's all black, and it's got the emerald furry emblem on the back. So I'm just letting her chill up there. They're the most gentle little spiders. I think she watched yesterday's episode. Today she's a little tired. So the subject matter is coming up that the government may actually fund vocational schools. That being schools that are related to skills like working with your hands, essentially, right? Fixing a car, building a house, sewing something together, and doing it in a way that is not slave labor. It doesn't require an immigrant from another country to take money underneath the table, but that we can actually pay American citizens living wages to get this stuff accomplished. Now, you may not be able to live in Laguna Beach putting together this stuff, but, every town has a mechanic. Every town does. So understand that your salaries aren't the same for the same exact job. You might make $35 an hour in the Midwest in, say, Tennessee, the state of Tennessee here in America, and then you move to Laguna Beach and you're making $90 an hour for the same job or even more, right? Guys who customize cars are making $160 an hour plus. But then again, they know everything about cars that could ever be known, right? There have been eras in history where we have these sort of Renaissance eras, right? Where we go into different phases of hive mind sharing. In the past, it was always regional, right? Europe is going through a Renaissance era. The Middle East is going through a Renaissance era. The South America, obviously, when the Incas discovered whoever the hell built all the stuff down there, they were going through their own version of it, right? It just wasn't on TV, right? Today we have a Renaissance going on that is unbelievable. The Great Awakening of mankind. And what's really funny is these corporations that are participating in censoring our materials, I think the hubris is that they actually believe they could do it. The snowball has already started. I mean, it is way bigger than could ever be stopped at this point. And every day that goes by it just gets bigger and bigger and bigger. And just to take a little digression on that for a second, for those of you that have been censored, this bird is making the weirdest noise. Must be mating season. But for those of you who have been censored, my condolences, okay, because that's obviously devastating. I have this channel completely backed up on a hard drive, which is nice. But some people didn't have that opportunity before their channels were turned off in the middle of the night, right? They had no strikes when they went to bed. They wake up and they've been issued this notice that their videos have been analyzed and there's more than 3 strikes. It's pretty easy to do if you just want to subjectively say, we have a moving target, which is called the law, and we're just going to decide what you did was bad. Strike, 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 strike. But the interesting thing is what has censorship done in history? At least in the last 100 years. Perhaps in a fully tyrannical world where if you watch censored material, they can hit your house with a drone and kill you. It'd be different, which is why we can't allow that to happen. But for now, you know, Catcher in the Rye, which for me I think is please forgive me, I think it's a complete piece of shit. But back in the day, when it was released, it was considered this just monumental intellectual accomplishment. For whatever reason, I cannot get into it. I've tried to read it a couple times. And I actually hope that at some point in maybe the next 20 years, I'll sit down with it and all of a sudden there's this epiphany as to why that's such an amazing book. But I think what the book's major purpose was to make you think out of the box. I also think it was fairly anti-establishment at a time when they wanted to start tearing this country apart, which is why it was censored. It might have been censored by well-intended people trying to hang on to the moral fabric of this country. But what happens when you censor? You draw more attention to something or someone, and people jump in. You know, how many times did we have a movie like The Exorcist get banned in like 3 or 4 southern states because they're very religious, and now you're crossing the state border to see it. When I was a kid, certain fireworks were deemed illegal. Even in the Midwest, bottle rockets were deemed illegal because the rumor was that they started fires. And again, I would buy these things by the cases in the neighboring states, and we'd fire them all over the place. I don't think I ever started a fire. Shot him right in the roof of the house across the street. Never caught the roof on fire. What happens when you kill someone like Martin Luther King? Does he go away? No. He becomes a martyr. And the funny thing is, interesting, is that Christ was murdered and became the savior of all the Christians. I mean, isn't that the greatest form of censorship? To be murdered? It makes the story go around when something like that happens. The beautiful thing about finding someone with wisdom is you typically can find a true, bona fide source of shortcuts. There's actually a heavy debate in the world about, I don't mean the active press, but over the centuries, there's been a huge debate as to whether or not shortcuts really exist. We know they do. But how many times have you seen someone promise you a shortcut, and it's the longest possible way you could have engaged in the activity that you're engaging in? I mean, the number of times I've just found myself in hell due to trying to do a shortcut is crazy. So there is a saying that I believe I've said a couple times, but I'll repeat it here because it's literally your anthem of wisdom. And it goes like this: It's better to take a shorter amount of time to do the job right than a longer amount of time to do the job wrong. And when you first hear that, you're like, what are you talking about? That is the stupidest thing I've ever heard. Of course. But what they're saying is, do the job right, which is not a shortcut, but will typically take you a shorter amount of time to accomplish than the person promising you a shortcut, and you end up taking a hell of a lot longer to get the job done. Because I was doing something silly. It was in the early 90s. I had this boss, this pervy guy from the CDC. He came to us from that organization. I'll tell you what, with what we know now from QAnon, wow, the fucking irony and congruent information is crazy. But he had noticed I was doing something stupid. I thought I was doing a shortcut, and I was taking a lot longer to get it done. So he said that statement, and I looked at him like, what? But he was right. God damn him, his pervy nature. He got fired from our company for doing some pretty lewd shit in front of other people. He's a grown man. I'll tell you a funny story. This is just a funny story. It has nothing, I mean, it has to do with this shortcut thing. It's actually the physical version of a shortcut. I don't know if I've ever, I think maybe I said this in season 1, but no one's going back, so let's just do it again here. I used to work in Vegas from the Bay Area, so I lived in San Francisco, and I would fly to the Bay Area, fly to San Francisco to work for Westwood Studios, one of our subsidiaries of Electronic Arts. They made Command & Conquer. I was working on a project called Earth and Beyond. So 4 of us would fly in and do our meetings and figure out what's going on. I'm doing all kinds of stuff, from conceptual art to backstory to taking care of their website, etc., etc. And we got in there one night, and it was just, we got in there around 6 o'clock. We needed to go eat dinner. Paris had just been built, the big Eiffel Tower. It must be 2001 or early 2002. And we land, and so now we're taking the car, we're driving, and they all decide that we want to go to Paris. And I'm like, yeah, sure, it sounds good. I haven't been into any of these mega-themed casinos just yet. It's been a while. So my friend, he says, I know a shortcut. Just park the car here. We're going to go in the back of the building, and we'll work our way to the front. I know a shortcut. Now, what's weird is this place was just built, so I don't know how you have a shortcut to a place that almost no one has been inside of, and obviously he was wrong. For any of you who've ever seen Spinal Tap, the movie, where they get stuck backstage trying to find the stage, is one of the most hilarious scenes in the film. It's really pretty early in the film. They're in their spandex, they got their, flying V guitar and their bass guitar or whatever, and they're just bumping into each other. They can't figure out where they're going. Well, that was us for I don't know how many minutes as we are trying to make it to the casino part of the thing. Eventually, we're walking down this hallway, and there's a door. Just random door in this flat hallway, right? Big, long corridor, right? And my buddy goes, here, let's try this door, because we have just meandered all around the bowels of this building. We open this door. We all go through. And it was like probably what it felt like to be the Time Bandits in the movie, in Terry Gilliam's movie, The Time Bandits, right? We walk through this door, 4 dudes, and we're on the stage of a ball. And we turn back, and we close the door, and I'm looking, and the whole wall is painted to look like sky behind it. So we've walked through a piece of art. Now we're on stage in this ballroom. There are people walking around. For one, there's a bunch of smoke, cigarette smoke, just floating about 50% in the air. I'm looking around. There is a tuxedo night. Women are in these, $10,000+ dresses. And I remember we're just wandering through this ball. We can see the casino finally. It's on the other side of this room, because that's the entrance to the ballroom. We're not supposed to be here. This is insane. And I remember this woman looked at me, really tall, amazing woman, and she has a big sequins dress on, all this other stuff, gorgeous. And I can't remember what she said to me, but it was something to the effect of, "Where did you guys come from?" And I remember looking at her and I said, "How can you wear that dress and all this smoke?" I think that's what I said, because I was just like coughing. I was just like, "God damn, this is thick in here," you know, because in Vegas you can smoke, right? And then we just made it to the lunch, or made it to the dinner. Now, one little other side note to this story is the kid that told us that he had the shortcut is obviously into this notion that he has the wisdom. He's going to drop on us all the time, right? This is a hilarious story, man. I told this once before. I know I have. It's been 2 years, so I'm going to tell it again. Right here inside this wisdom episode. We sit down for dinner. And this place is perfect, right? It's Paris on the first couple months that it's been open, I swear to God. And he wants to order escargot because he's had it before. Now, I know what that is, but I've never eaten it before. I don't know how it's served. He's the only one buying it. And I forgot what I ate. And we're all sitting there. And this kid keeps talking about escargot and telling us how it's made, and basically trying to convince us all that he's a super expert eating escargot. And we're like, okay, but it's starting to get to that point, that awkward point, where we're all looking at each other going, is he continuing this conversation? Because we're kind of done with his Cliff Clavin breakdown of escargot, right? So we all get our food. And here comes his escargot, which if you've never seen it served, it comes in these little, it's a little tray that has little tiny, like ice cream scoop divots in it, right? So little half moon divots, and the escargots are floating inside those little divots, and it's floating in boiling hot oil. And they give you a little utensil to get it out of there. And here's the expert. He has convinced us, or at least he's attempted to convince us, that he is the de facto expert on such things. All right. He takes this little scooper, which fits just inside, a little half moon shape. And I've already started eating. I'm starving to death. It took us forever to get to this fucking restaurant. We had to wait to get our food. And he has scooped up the escargot and the oil, and he puts it in his mouth. Not realizing that this oil, I don't know, it must be 250 plus degrees Fahrenheit. And he has one of those moments where he has burned the inside of his mouth so instantaneously that his body is making him spit this out because he is on fire. And I'm not looking because I'm got my head down in my dish, but then I look over and the expert doesn't know how to eat escargot. Right? I'm assuming he probably should have taken this little fork thing, hit the escargot, dabbled off the boiling hot stuff, blown on it, and eaten it. Or wait a shitload of minutes before he goes and scoops up this boiling hot oil into his mouth. And at that point, you know, we're all looking around and we're trying not to laugh. And, you know, only time I've ever seen that after that point that looked exactly the same as that. I was in a sushi restaurant in the Bay Area, and a guy had ordered hot tea, and he's on a date, and he poured himself some super hot tea, which is why I never fucking drink this stuff, and he threw back a big mouthful, and it must have been, I don't know, really, really hot, because he spits all over his girlfriend. And it's this weird sound you make when your body is actually making you spit out of a rejection, you know, of heat. The moral of the story of those two stories is that sometimes you have folks that are very interested in being the wise man or the wise woman, but they haven't quite made it yet. Remember what I always say on this show, truth predicts the future. Everything else is bullshit. So if someone gives you a bunch of wisdom in a very confident way to create shortcuts for you, but you end up either never reaching your goal, or you go through one of the most tumultuous paths to reach your goal, you may want to evaluate where you got your information from, right? Now, if someone tells you straight to your face, they're a wise old soul, and they go, Oh, you want to do that, eh? Yep, I do. I totally do. You sure? Yeah. You know how hard it is to do that, right? I think I do, but obviously I don't completely understand how hard it is because I've never done it before. I've tried a couple times and it's been really, really tough to continue. And they're like, okay. If the wise soul says you're biting off one of the biggest things you could possibly bite off in life, this is going to kick your ass. I can't give you all the answers to get there, but I can definitely put you on the right path. I can give you a mechanism by which on a daily basis, hourly, minute, second to second basis, you can continue the process of making progress. Then you have the challenge comfortably presented to you. You know what you're getting into, which can be the most exciting thing in the world if someone tells you it's really hard, because challenges are what define us, right? The hero is defined when they make decisions under pressure. Again, there's that old Superman movie with Christopher Reeve, the very, very first one. Lex Luthor launches 2 ICBMs, intercontinental ballistic missiles. One's going to hit the East Coast, one's going to hit the West Coast. So Ms. Kaspbacher makes him choose the East Coast first because that's where her mother lives. And she's basically saying, if I get this kryptonite off your chest, you're going to say my mother first, right? When his girlfriend lives on the West Coast and that bomb's going to potentially kill her. You had to make a decision under pressure. A good writer will always set up a really good pressurized situation that the heroes have to respond to. In this particular scenario, you are the hero. And it's pretty fun when you get into it, especially when you're controlling your destiny. Now, the other thing that can occur in this line of thinking, in this line of taking action in your life, is that you might have to do some things you don't want to do that you might quite accurately categorize as a waste of your time. But you have to do them because perhaps you have to pay the bills in between your dream being realized, right? That's part of your situation. That's part of your dues. It's unfortunate that you have to do it, but all of us typically find ourselves in that situation from time to time. Just know it's normal. And know that unfortunately, I think this is true, that the majority of the world doesn't chase their dreams. As long as you are, and you have to do the thing that they're doing. Like the thing that you don't want to do, that you have categorized as, God damn it, I have to do this job over here. I don't want to, but I got to keep my lights on. I got to keep my kids fed. But I am spending my spare time chasing my dream. The benefit there to you, the wonderful reality for you, is that at least you're chasing your dream. You know, I had someone tell me once an analogy of using football, which is pretty good. If I start you on the 1 yard line of your end zone, you got to take that ball all the way down the field to the other guy's end zone before you score, before you get that dream moment fully fulfilled, right? Now, obviously, what you want to do is pick up that ball and run your ass down there. And maybe you conceive of like a few linemen you got to knock down. You got to left, right, fake them out, and then you run. That's what you want to have happen. And sometimes you're going to get those moments. But as long as you can wake up every single day of your life and lift that ball up and move it an inch and put it back down. We'll just do the math on 100 yards. You're going to make it. You're going to make it in your lifetime. Because it isn't always going to be an inch. Sometimes you're going to pick that ball up and run it 20 yards in one day because you just had an epiphany. Again, the clouds disappeared, you know, it's like that old song. I can see clearly now, the rain is gone, right? Bright sunshiny day, I can't remember the actual name of it. By the way, that song is fantastic. I used to hate it when I was a kid. I listen to it now and it's like an anthem to our world at this point. Especially if you've awakened, listen to those lyrics as a person who has become a truther. I can see clearly now, the rain is gone. You know? Gone are the dark clouds that used to pass me by, or something like that. I can't remember the lyrics completely, but It's an amazing song. Could be our anthem. Some people are very compulsive about the things that they want. And, you know, what's interesting is I have some friends that are absolutely neurotic human beings. I mean, they're amazing to watch. But when you sit down with them and try to have a conversation, when you try to, I don't know, eat dinner with them or whatever, they seem utterly and completely scatterbrained. They can't stay on the same subject for more than 2 seconds. And so I remain their friends, but I can't get terribly close because my brain is so linear and focused that it drives me nuts. However, these people are usually very successful in their goals, and they're missing usually a whole level of social interaction because of their personality is sort of a repellent. They're usually single forever, but they do enjoy their life in their own particular way. And again, there are people that have the social side of things, everything you could possibly imagine, the perfect spouse, the perfect kids, but they don't have any sense of success in their life, and so they yearn for what the neurotic person wants, and the neurotic person yearns for what they want. Again, I think it's interesting. Life is a bit like a dollar bill. You have 100 cents you can spend on things, and you can't, you know, a fully satisfied family life is usually $1. And a fully satisfied career is $1. And so you need $2 to get both sides. And most of us don't have any more than $1. So you have to balance everything. A little bit of this, a little bit of that. Now some people miraculously can get a sale. Let's put it that way. They get 50% off both sides and they get both. But boy, is that ever rare, right? Willy Wonka didn't have a wife. You know what I'm saying? The wizard from the Wizard of Oz didn't have a wife. But the dude was in charge, right, of Oz. But how many times have you had I don't know, your house is dirty. You live by yourself for now, and you have to kick your own ass to clean it. And for a very long time, you don't. You just kind of go, well, I will do it. I know I will do it because it can't continue like this forever. But I'm really busy right now. I'm making progress. I'm making amazing progress in certain areas of my life. But eventually, something breaks in you and you get it cleaned. And then you really enjoy your cleaner environment. If you're like me, you'll say, oh my God, I just need to build a better routine in my life such that I kind of keep things clean as I go. If I just put my keys always right there with my wallet and my spare cash, whatever I'm carrying on me, then I never have to search for it. You know, if the towel goes here and my clothes go here and whatever. New mail, that's like the biggest pain in the ass, right? I get 1% of my mail is something I need to actually open up, save packages I'm having sent to the house with items that I'm using to construct something, right? I envy people that have it all, worked out. It's cool. They're wise, right? It's easy to get yourself isolated in such a way that you have a wonderful world all by yourself, whatever it is. And I don't mean physically isolated. You might actually live by yourself and not have a social circle. Or you could have, again, a whole wife, husband, kids, all that kind of stuff, and you still have your little microcosm that you live in. You come inside the house, you eat your food, you sit in the front room, you watch your favorite show, you go to bed, you go out to the garage, you go to your workshop, whatever, your office. And even though these other people in your life, you're trying to take care of some sort of destiny either for you, or you're, in addition, trying to create some legacy for your family such that when you, at some point, succeed, they actually have a franchise they can take over. When you look at Hollywood, it's really amazing how many people succeeded because their parents were in the business before them, right? And they're actually good at what they do. Sometimes that happens and, it's just like, how did this horrible actor get a chance to act? How did this horrible singer ever get on stage? Her sister's that girl who's super popular. Or their father was super popular. I think Michael Douglas and the Bridges brothers are a real good example of fathers that taught their sons how to do it. And, you know, I'm assuming that their kids and grandkids will be somewhere in our future. Kurt Russell's son is one of the best actors I've seen in the last 10, 20 years. I hope he does extremely well. But my point here, in closing, is that sometimes you got to get out. You have to seek wisdom. Some of you are really good at seeking it online and doing email kind of pen pal stuff that we used to do back in the pre-internet days. Hey, if that works for you, go for it. I will say that the amount of information you can transfer in a conversation face-to-face, whether you be Skyping or actually meeting someone face-to-face, is exponentially higher, right? And the main reason that face-to-face is so valuable is that you'll have epiphanies in the conversation. You're talking, and everything in email is very linear, right? It's like, I am trying not to waste your time, I'm asking you very specific questions, and you'll get little digressions here and there in your chains back and forth in your threads, but at some point you just get tired of typing. But if you're sitting down relaxing, you know, my writing mentor and I, if we wrote emails, it's pretty sparse because it takes a long time, and he and I both are writers, and so we try to make our emails tiny little masterpieces of communication because that's just our nature. But when I go to eat lunch with them, I get 10 times as much in a little burger and a cocktail, right? You know, and let me just throw this particular little epiphany in here, because I've thought about trying to create an episode about this, but I think it's hard to format this particular piece of wisdom. You've heard me say thousands of times on this show, sometimes you just need someone to remind you that this is something you need to do, something you need to think of, right? Isn't that weird? But that's the truth. It's definitely the truth for me. Sometimes someone just needs to say, oh, you're trying to build something electronic? You should go find some people that know what you need to know and get the information that you need. For me, I'm walking into this new group that I found, a full-blown engineer in software. And so it might be that the commodity that I bring is the software engineering side of things. In fact, I watched a presentation of a gentleman who had created a pretty cool we use electronic menorah. And so he wanted to create something that stood in his window, and then it was all made of LEDs, and it would go through the sequence of the days, and it was really brilliantly put together using these new pixel LEDs, these neopixels that are starting to get real popular in this electronics group. But he's an older gentleman, and I looked at his code, and I could see that there were ways of taking 30 lines of code and making it probably 4. And at some point, when I get to know the group a little bit better, I might offer my skill set in there to say, why don't you send me that Arduino skit and let me see if I can't optimize this for you, right? I could even bring my computer that day and just do it right in front of his face. But he did get the job done, and that's what's super cool. So when you first create something and first invent something, a lot of times you'll create what we call the Frankenstein version of it, and then eventually you refine it and it becomes something beautiful. The thing I'm going to create, that I've already started, is that I'm going to be creating something that's probably hundreds of dollars for the prototype, and eventually I'm going to take it to experts and say, look, I need to make this 5-volt thing run on 1.5 volts if possible, and I need to shrink the price of this, and this. And then it becomes affordable for a consumer. We all gain wisdom as we live our lives. Whether or not we are still neurotic, or whether or not we're, less than 50% efficient with our life, we still have these moments, these things, right? They're all the life hack videos on YouTube, which are little videos of wisdom. You know, someone saying, well, you know, you want to get a ring off a finger that is swollen because the ring was too small, or the person hasn't taken it off in years, or someone put someone else's ring on, you know, starts to accumulate blood on this side of the finger and therefore blocking the ring to come off. This is a really cool trick where these guys they take string, they lube up the finger with butter, they take string, they feed it underneath the ring, and they simply pull the string off the finger, and it creates an assembly line of like a conveyor belt of sorts to pull the ring off the finger. And it just falls off the finger, and everything's fine. The ring doesn't have to be cut up. The finger doesn't get injured. There's immediate relief, and you know, you tell the subject, don't ever do that again, right? Those are gems. When I grew up in the Midwest, it was probably 20 years behind the rest of the United States in terms of architecture, technology, etc. It got much better in the 80s, and again, we had these whiz kids in town that would take the technology for the rest of the country 20 years in the future. It was just weird how in these weird sterile environments, we're in the middle of nowhere. We're 100 miles from any major city in all directions, north, south, east, west. And yet we had these like unbelievable geniuses in electronics. Crazy how that happens, right? But the cool thing about growing up in this sort of time capsule of the past was that wisdom was everywhere. It was almost as if you reached a certain age, and depending on your engagement with adults and your maturity, they would teach you as soon as you showed the intellectual prowess to take on the information. And you would be adopted by these old guys. I was a dude, so I didn't get too much from the women, but you'd be adopted by these older men in that, you know, you want to learn how to fish? Well, I expect you to be here every Saturday between these two timetables, and I'm going to teach you the difference between bass fishing, trout fishing, catfish fishing, and I'm going to teach you about how turtles work in this pond of mine, because they're going to eat your fish if you try to hang them off the dock, unless you do this, this, and this. You know, I told you about the wood carving I did with my grandfather. Amazing. You walk in there, and the funny thing is you'll find kids that are a lot younger than you that know the tricks. So my challenge to you guys is this. If you've been sitting on an idea for a long time, you got it in your heart, in your soul, and you can't stop it. You can't stop thinking about it, yearning for it. What I want you to do is to reevaluate the dream, make sure you still have complete interest in doing it, and realize that sometimes what you need to do is engage the dream to figure out whether or not it is a dream you want to keep. It's totally productive in life to say, I think I want to learn the guitar. And so you get a little cheapy guitar and you take some lessons in the genre of music that you want to learn. Don't go off and learn crap you don't ever want to play, because you'll quit the art of playing guitar because you're playing stupid stuff, right? Get into exactly what you want. Practice, practice, practice. And if you decide this is going to take way longer than I want to invest, and you stop, you sell that guitar or give it to someone who wants to get into it, you've at least extinguished in your soul that particular dream is not one that you're really interested in, and you go to the next one, because most people have a next one, trust me. So I want you to reevaluate your dreams, and then I want you to find someone with the skill set and the wisdom of what you want to do. And you might find yourself, like I was yesterday, going from sort of this hunt and pecking Google exercise online to immediate solutions. This guy was like, you're looking for this. Boom. It was right there. And again, all I'm doing is telling you what you have to do. It's what I do, right? But even I forget that I need to seek out other people sometimes. Now, sometimes, I want to tell you about a sort of an unfortunate situation that I recently ran into with someone that I was trying to help, because I don't want you to do this. I ran into a gentleman who has devoted the last 7 years of his life to writing screenplays. And obviously yours truly has been in that business for at least 11 years very seriously, getting formally trained by some geniuses, both from a mentorship level to Robert McKee and his course, which I devoured inside and out. Having spent the 20 years before that, from 87 to 2007, writing as a novice, not knowing exactly the pieces and parts that I have to address to write a great script. Having these visions of grandeur of walking into a studio and selling a script without knowing what the hell I'm doing, right? Well, I was introduced to this person and I interviewed him. I asked him tons of questions. I was able to prove to myself that he does have some great ideas. He doesn't write in any professional software. That was the first sign that... And he scoffed at the fact of using professional software, which is very, very important because it does all the work for you. And if you're wasting your time inside of products like Microsoft Word writing a script, and I say, look, we don't write that particular thing in a script ever. In a professional piece of software, you uncheck a checkbox and they're all removed from your script in 2 seconds. In a non-professional piece of software, you're doing a find and replace and you're screwing up the format of your script. This person had visions of grandeur, as high as they could go, meeting the most renowned directors in the world to sell his scripts. Hey, it can happen. It can happen. So I happen to have contacts that are exactly what he needs to get his career started. And I mean tippy-top agents that are connected to agencies that are the biggest agencies in the world. In fact, the biggest agency in the world, which will remain nameless. Within 10 minutes, I was able to send a text message, find out that the guy that he needs to talk to is actually on his way to our location. Within 5 minutes, this person walks in the door and I said, that's him. We're going to sit down and talk to him, but you need to pitch your own shit, right? I'm not here to hold your hand, right? You have these visions of grandeur of talking to the biggest directors who are alive today. So you're going to have to nut up and prove that you've got the ability to communicate. You're a writer. That's what you do. After about 10 minutes, my buddy sat down next to this guy. And I'm looking at him. I'm like, there he is. And I make the introduction. I said, I set the whole premise up. I said, he's got scripts that he thinks would be very helpful to this director. I know that's a huge thing, but can you hook him up? And to my shock, my buddy, the contact, said, yeah, I know the people that are his agents. They're just down the hallway. This is how much juice is in this room. So then we're watching TV, and I'm waiting, and I'm waiting, and I'm waiting for this guy to start talking to the guy he's sitting right next to. Nothing. Zero. So I'm like, okay, he's shy. He's shy. All right, maybe, geniuses are shy sometimes. So I thread the conversation together one more time. I take on the role of the guy sitting next to me, who's supposed to be talking to the guy next to him, who's my contact. Nothing. I totally set it up again. Nothing. Then I just basically say, well, I got to go. I've been here all day. I got to get out of here. So I leave. Then I follow up through text messages, and I find out that apparently they set up a meeting. It's supposed to occur in about 3 days. It is the meeting that every writer in the world would want to have. I mean, the most coveted special moment on planet Earth. So I'm excited. I then bump into this guy another 2 or 3 times, and so now I'm sitting there going, okay, have you ever... I know that he doesn't know anything about Robert McKee. Very important, because Robert McKee defined the vocabulary of Hollywood. If you do not know his vocabulary, you're dead in the water when you go in for an interview about your writing capabilities, because they're going to use words that we don't normally use in English language. And so I start telling him. Well, this guy starts to do something that I see all the time, especially in novices, which is to say something to the effect of, oh yeah, I totally know that. Oh yeah, totally, that's easy. Yeah, I totally know that. I said, okay. Having the wisdom that I have in this particular area of the world, said, all right, why don't you give me your 3-sentence pitch for the script that we've been talking about for the last 3 days? And the first sentence has got to be good enough to get the person to read the second sentence. The second sentence has to be good enough to get them to read the third sentence. And by the time they are done with the third sentence, they are completely aware of what the hell you're pitching. Intellectual crickets started happening, right? You couldn't do it. We have something in script writing we call the controlling idea. Again, it's a Robert McKee phrase. It is the key phrase that you must communicate, which is the overall theme and arc of your entire script. Back in the old Greek theater days, one would have said something like, love conquers all. Good always is victorious over evil. But we don't say those anymore because those are all cliche. You must bring something much more insightful, original, which will control every word in your entire script from the very first page to the last page. Nothing. I'm like, okay, well, that's very hard. Those are really hard things to have to come up with. So I brought up my 17 treatments that I'm working on right now. And so I started reading mine to him. I said, you see how that worked? 3 sentences, you totally know what that script's about. Oh yeah, that's easy, right? So I started reading the controlling ideas. Oh, that's easy. Well, wouldn't you know it, he didn't make his meeting. He was asked to submit material to the agent so that he could get him the meeting and feel confident about not bringing in a dud. And there was no reply. Not only didn't deliver the material, but didn't reply. The meeting never happened. I continue to follow up through text messages with my buddy who's the agent saying, did this guy ever follow up with you? Anything? Say he was sorry? Needs more time? No, nothing. And the weird thing is that guy continues to show up where I show up, the guy that failed, and doesn't mention anything about completely failing. He's a full-time writer, retired, spends all of his money on surviving while he is trying to become a writer. He got the opportunity of a lifetime and completely and utterly blew it. This is why people think that a lot of times they'll come out here to succeed and they'll go home and they'll blame the system. They'll blame LA for their failures. But it was really their failure. Like I always say, luck is often defined in Hollywood as a shit ton of hard work and determination and perseverance, right? Just like our World of Warcraft guys say all the time, and the merchants say that. In my definition is luck can only be really acquired in the opportunity, which is exactly what happened in this particular situation. The individual expressed to me his desire to be a writer professionally. Unlike me, he's able to work on it full-time 7 years in a row. I have never been in that situation for anything more than maybe a year and a half when I've saved up a stack of money and I write. But usually I'm writing while I have some other career. And so I sent a text message and got him the luck to talk to this individual. But like I always say on this show, you got to bring the skills. And he didn't have them. He can get them. But if he constantly tells himself, that's easy, well, he's got an intellectual barrier between him and his skill set getting to that upper level. If he minimizes things like professional writing software, he's always going to go in looking like a novice. When they say, send me your script, and he sends it in a Word file, right? So the interesting thing is I've finally been able to get the ball rolling for my own meeting with my same contact. There's various logistic reasons why it's taken so long to get this set up. But I'm bringing the skills. And it's still going to be hard as hell to get it to succeed, right? Like I said in my Making It in Hollywood episode, which isn't all just about Hollywood, folks. It's about life in general, how you have to approach your dreams in general. The people that you're going to talk to in life, in all areas of life, not just Hollywood, folks, but all areas. You're going to go in and talk to a CEO of a company. They're the founder of the company in a lot of cases. Or the company is so gigantic that it's 80 years old. And if you're talking to the person that has been elected to run that business, then you're obviously not talking to some schmo. You're talking to a genius. And so, in most cases, 98% of the time, right? Every once in a while, it's the owner's son and or whatever, daughter, and they don't know what the hell they're doing. That's so rare. That's so freaking rare. Because they get kicked out so fast, it's not even funny. So, what they want to see in you is wisdom. And wisdom in an interview like that will go something like this. If you are in an interview to get what you want in life, and you're coming from a novice standpoint, you're going to say things that's going to reveal your remedial thinking. And sometimes that's what they're looking for, right? Sometimes, for instance, there's the Twilight Zone in the fourth season, where the guy's a toy maker, and he's in his 30s, and he's a child, but he's 40 years old. He's 30, he's supposed to be 36 in the script, whatever. But they like him in the company because he has, a little bit of adultness to him, but what they really want is the childish nature in him to see what children really want, and he's extremely good at it, right? And so, those are the exceptions. But in most cases, they want to see someone who can execute beautifully and keep the company profitable. It's all about money. In any company, you have to be. You can't pay people's rents and insurance and keep a building open without generating a profit. I know you feel me, but I want to throw that one at the last second because it was really educational for me, and I've passed the story around to a couple friends of mine as an example of, how it works, and everyone's like, yep, I've been there, I've seen that before, right? If you haven't been to deepthoughtsradio.com, please go. It will guide you in all the right directions. If you're watching this on a random YouTube moment, but you'd rather have this in your car as a podcast, it's all up there. Audio, video, locked Facebook group, in case you want to get into some really cool discussions and see some pretty good trains of thought up there, and all kinds of different stuff, from politics to science to philosophy. It's just littered with cool posts. If you want to support the show, there is a Patreon page, which is a apparatus where you can donate $1 a month or whatever. I am feeding this full of previews of these episodes before they get released on YouTube. So anyhow, take care of yourself and someone else, and I'll see you in the next Deep Thoughts. Over now.